call this meeting to order and stand and have a pledge prayer by Susan, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Dear God, thank you for this day, and thank you for all the people who come together to work for the good of our community. At the threshold of a new year, may we work to make good decisions and good choices that will benefit all citizens of Boonville. Amen.
Thanks for everyone coming out on this nice sunny day. We'll try to get through this thing as quick as we can. Roll call.
Meadows?
Here.
Beach?
Here.
Hurt? Carter?
Here.
Venable?
Here.
Dorman? Stock?
Here.
Young?
Here. Hearing from citizens. Any citizens' comments tonight? Yes, sir. Step up to the podium, sign your name and what ward you're in. And
my name is Kelly Coleman. I'll write it down here in a minute. I don't want to forget what I'm going to say first. I'm not even sure if I'm at the right meeting. I do live in Boonville city limits, about a block and a half from here. And I maybe should hit the Chamber of Commerce in addition to here. Probably both doesn't hurt. But I had an idea on how to maybe get a little more cash into Boonville. I moved here 2 years ago from Sedalia, but I came through this town between 1995 and 98, and I thought it was some sort of gold mine. Every restaurant on the main street was full, the table. I couldn't find a table to eat. I kept thinking, boy, when I get through selling land down in Pettis County and Benton County, I'm heading straight for Cooper County, where the money is. And then I guess what happened was in 98, let me think for a minute, 2008, we had a bad downturn which affected us down in Benton County. I'm a real estate broker by trade for the last many years of my life. I've done a lot of stuff. And I was full-time. And my business was affected down in Benton County. Kansas City buyers dropped off coming down. And I heard that here in Boonville, some of your manufacturing companies closed up. I didn't know how many you had till I had bought a little rental here. And I had an offer on my house in Sedalia 2 years ago from a man who lived back behind me, cash money, and I said, put it in a suitcase and go to the title company and I'll sell my house, and he did. That was a certified check, not cash, in a suitcase. So then I didn't have any place to go, and I had a rental house over here, and I came over here, and I asked the renter to move out. He never paid his rent quite on time, and moved in and thought I had some other business thing I was doing, and it worked out to be over here. And I noticed, well, the money didn't seem like it's the same as it was between 95 and 2000. And so every time I drive to St. Louis or Kansas City, which I do often, I have family in St. Louis, I have family in Kansas City, and I run I-70 all the time. I think there's 2 billboards up on I-70, am I right, that pertain to Boonville. One you read about halfway between Kansas City and here, and the other one's closer to St. Louis, I think, than it is to here. And it kind of stresses the antiques and the legacy and historical sites. Well, I thought that it would be better to have 2 more billboards closer to Columbia, like a mile outside the city limits, or however close you could get and afford it, going into Columbia from the west, and another one on the east side coming in from the east, that instead of stressing the historical aspects of Boonville, to stress the things that really made a huge difference to me. And I am a licensed real estate broker and have been for 40-something years. And these are the things that would matter to me and that brought me here. Lower crime rate, lower traffic, lower prices for cottages and mansions. You can kind of ham it up. I'd hire, if I was the king here and there wasn't any council or anything, I would order 2 billboards, one facing Kansas City, one facing St. Louis, closer to Columbia, And I would steal all those people over there that are suffering because they haven't come over here and found out what a good deal it is. I drive to Columbia Mall in 21 minutes, and I could take that long getting across Columbia coming in from Jeff City on 63. But a lot of those people over there, I go to Columbia a lot. My daughter graduated there, and I have other friends that are connected over there. They don't know anything about hardly Boonville. And the way I look at it, I-70 is to Boonville today what the Missouri River was to Boonville 150 years ago. There's all that traffic out there. They go back and forth. And Columbia sitting over there is like begging to poach off them and get people to look at some of the stuff they can buy here. I bought my second house the other day up on Main Street, and everybody that looks at it says, boy, over in Columbia you would have paid, they give me a price that's 3 to 4 times higher than what I paid for it. And I think, well, I mean, they ought to wake up and come over here. But unless you notify them, they're not going to come. Now, I made my living after I quit teaching political science at Central Missouri State University. I've made my living ever since on a commission basis. Advertising, I used the phone a lot, but I advertised in the paper and billboards. And I tried putting a little office down there at Lake of the Ozarks at the 77-mile marker, about 15 miles off 65 highway. And I really struggled on that little try until I stuck 2 billboards up on 65. And I made them real imaginative. People talked about them. I mean, I got some crazy ideas. And then I had more business that I could hardly keep up with. Anyway, I walk a lot, and whenever I walk around Boonville, I think, boy, this is just missing it here. I don't know how to go about getting low industry, but I know how you can get people to come in and buy houses. I didn't sell houses. I sold land. But I know the way you do that, particularly when you're sitting next to an outfit that in almost every single thing you mentioned isn't doing as well as Boonville, to most people's taste. I mean, the crime rate, I looked over there to buy before I moved into the little rental here. I was sitting in one area that looked just fine. The lady came over crying and told me, you should get in your car and drive away fast. I cannot walk my dog at night. The gangs meet in my front yard and sell drugs. And I can't tell you the number of stories I've heard about crime. And then the prices of their properties over there. So I thought I'd stop by, throw it out for an idea, and I would contribute partly to the fund just because I live here. It would be nice to have money clinking in the cash registers and people starting more services. How many laundromats are there in this town now? Is there 1?
2.
Is there 2? I would picture the town would warrant 4 or 5, but if it was really full up and going. And I thought that having a billboard real close to Columbia, where when people, just before they move into that mess over there, they see on a billboard that's been very artistically done, not just someone scratching it out and saying we'll pay the price for a year, but someone that's really creative and put on there. I mean, just think of all it's a lower crime rate, lower prices, quieter living. I don't know, there's 4 or 5 I could think of before I came in here and stood behind the podium, but there's a whole lot of stuff that it beats the hell out of Columbia. It's a better place to live. So that's why I came down, and I'm not even sure I'd open another real estate company up. I've had 5, and I've sold them all, except the last one. I just kind of let it sit there. But I'd be on Main Street up there, and I wouldn't mind opening one again if people were going to break the door down to buy something. I don't even know, well, I know a couple of the guys that sell land out here, and I can't imagine more people don't buy everything. Land, houses, commercial property. I can see the struggle going on Main Street when I walk, and I walk about 4 days a week, and I walk about every hour of a 24-hour day. When you stretch it over the 2 years I've been here, it's been all different times. And most of the tourist shops, I'd say over half the time during the daytime, are locked. I mean, it's a nice front, but it's not even open. On the weekend, maybe a few people going in. I see that much differently. It's just because those billboards aren't, that would be the big step. There's other things too. But the billboards are, to me, the obvious thing. I see the two closer to Kansas City, closer to St. Louis, and by the time I go by Boonville, I forgot all about Boonville. And since I've been here, I've seen maybe 2 or 3 people looking at sites, making little notes like they're actually going around visiting Civil War sites. But I see a whole lot more people over in Columbia looking at houses. People have to live somewhere. Everybody has to live somewhere. And this beats the heck out of living over in Columbia, to my way of thinking. So I thought, well, instead of telling your friends that at a Halloween party, or not a Halloween, New Year's Eve, go down to this, go down and tell them at the city hall. Is that where I'm at? And then probably a Chamber of Commerce, and find out who's supposed to initiate something like that. And I had one other idea I was going to say, but I'll wait and see how anybody's interested in billboards or having more money in Boonville. You know, there are certain advantages for people that live here not having a lot of money here. But I think most people benefit by having more money. It's more jobs and more services and that sort of thing. I have one other idea that I noticed over 42 years of making my living on a commission basis selling real estate. But I figured this one would probably be enough for the evening. Now I'll put my name down here, and I guess I can leave now. And I'll put my phone number here. And if anybody says, well, that's not too bad an idea that old boy had, and you call me, I would follow through and do something to help. The first thing would be to find out where you can get a huge billboard, at least as big as the ones that are up. And then go find a graphic artist that's either intoxicated half the time or smokes a lot of pot or something, and he's real imaginative, and he gives us a drawing and says, holy cow, people are going to look at that, and have to be careful they don't wreck their truck on I-70. There are ads like that. I ran a bunch of them when I was in the real estate business, and they paid off. I didn't get drunk, and I don't do drugs. But I mean, my mind just runs out there. And we find somebody's mind runs out there, and he puts it up there, and I just don't know who's not interested in lower prices. My daughter from St. Louis comes here periodically. I have 2 others that come here from Asheville. They go around like this. How much is that one? I can't believe it. That cost $400,000 in Asheville. Well, that sold for $68,000. And they just go like that. And the one was in Columbia for 4 years, and she can't believe it. That's just a fact. And I'm not off on that.
Well, we thank you, Mr. Coleman, and we are actually been talking about this for about the last 2 months.
Oh, really?
Yes. So
oh, that's great.
You will be getting a telephone call and
good.
Giving us some great ideas.
Well, I think it's exciting to do something like that and to see cars lined up down. I can't tell you, 95 to 98, what it was like. You probably all lived here all your lives or something, but I've been in Boonville, but till 2 years ago, I'd been in town 3 times, and 2 of them just driving through. That one time I got out and walked around, it was about dark, almost dark, and there was some restaurant right down here on the main drag, and you could look in the window, and they were eating. Their arms were hitting the window while they ate. They had tables lined up right up to the front window. I thought, holy cow, this town is got to be some sort of mecca. And then I went around asking people, what are the politics in this town? I won't go there, but they told me kind of. It sounded like a great place to live to me, and I liked my last 2 years, and I think that it might help to have those 2 billboards. I see a lot of billboards. They're pretty much run-of-the-mill. I mean, unless they're dirty. Everybody remembers the dirty one, advertising, or an off-color business. They'll remember that, not because it's creative, just because it's off-color. The rest of the billboards, it's kind of hard to remember where they are unless you get somebody that's really creative and takes it right out to the edge. And I don't know why not. Why not do it and have people say, boy, did you see that ad about Boonville after you cross the bridge there over the Missouri River? Put it close to Columbia, because the closer you get to Columbia, the more people that are converging on that point, so more people see it. And then right behind it, they get that juxtaposition of coming over the bridge and seeing that pretty countryside and then trying to make it to the mall without getting hit where you exit there in the traffic. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening.
Anyone else got any citizens' comments? Seeing none, we'll move on. Approval of the minutes from the December 18th meeting. Any corrections or in the minutes, Ned?
Page 5, under mayor, second to the last line, stated that his committee will be a temporary ad hoc committee. That should be this instead of his. Did you catch it?
Got it.
Got
Okay,
it.
thank you.
Has anybody else got anything? Minutes to stay approved. There's no consent items, presentation of the accounts.
Ordinance appropriating money. Be it ordained by the council of the city of Boonville as follows. Section 1, for the purpose of paying salaries and various accounts against the city of Boonville, which have been allowed by the council at the regular meeting thereof on January 2nd, 2018, the sum of $356,214.14. General fund, $81,096.31. Sanitation, $17,460.57. CIP tax, $3,922.61. Waterworks, $116,639.70. Capital projects, $27. Wastewater, $53,259.93. Tourism, $3,982.09. Gaming, $20,821.65. Parks and Water, $59,004.28. Section 2. The accountant is hereby authorized and instructed to draw checks on the respective city bank accounts in favor of the persons whose salaries and accounts have been allowed as above, amounting to $356,214.14, being the total amount of money above appropriated. Section 3. This ordinance shall take effect and be enforced from and after its passage. First reading on January 2nd, 2018. Read for the second time this second day of January 2018, since a copy was made available prior to the meeting.
Second reading, title only.
Ordinance appropriating money.
Mayor, I move that we approve this ordinance.
Do I hear? Any questions? Roll call.
Meadows,
Yes.
Beach,
Yes.
Hurt,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Venable,
Yes.
Dorman, Stock,
Yes.
Young.
Yes.
Moving on to unfinished business, second reading of bill number 2017-038, amending the salaries of the mayor and council.
Mayor, could I move to table this to the next meeting, please?
Do I hear a second on that?
I'll second.
You gotta read it first.
Yeah, read it first.
An ordinance of the city of Boonville, Missouri, amending and adding the salaries of the mayor and city council to chapter 2, article 3 of the Boonville Code of General Ordinances, providing effective dates therefore, and repealing all ordinances in conflict with this ordinance.
Now, Ned,
Repeat?
repeat.
Repeat. Sure. I shall move to table it. I'll second.
Roll call.
Meadows,
Yes.
Beach,
Yes.
Hurt,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Venable,
Yes.
Young, Stock,
Yes.
Young.
Yes.
Moving on to new business, fire truck discussion.
Okay, I'll kick it off here a little bit. There's a couple of memos in your packet that were written middle of last week. I'm not going to repeat the whole memo, but as most of you know, we've had a ladder truck on our list for a long time. It's never quite got up above the line to get funded. And engaged on it, other than more of as, I guess, as a reaction. And in thinking it through, I don't think we've ever really discussed it as a council either, other than just some image of a fire truck out there, a ladder truck we're talking about. And so that word has gotten around over the years, and periodically Tim's solicited by salesmen for used trucks, and usually they're not much appeal to us for one reason or another. Was one about a year ago that we thought had some potential, but then we eventually figured out it had a flaw, and we just let it go. And that kind of goes until we're kind of approached again. And as noted in here, Tim was approached a while back on one that we, at the time, were kind of intrigued with. And so we engaged a bit with it. I mentioned it last meeting and encouraged anybody to visit with us in the meantime about it, and a few of you have done that. In the meantime, also, we also kind of surveyed the land, I guess, in terms of what else is out there, because if there's one used truck, there's always another, and of course that turns over regularly and so forth, and so we've ended up with a range of, and we've probably got 6 or 8 alternatives now, including 3 or 4 that I think have evolved since we both wrote these memos. Probably to the point where we're more confused than we thought we were to start with. I thought it might be worth just talking about it. I don't know that we have to make a decision. I don't know that we need to make a decision, but we just kind of felt we needed to see where it went. And so I guess I'll let Tim start out on it, and then we'll try to fill in the blanks and just see where it goes. So.
Yeah, like Earl said, over the past 3 weeks, this has got a lot more confusing. We first thought we were just talking about this O2 that came through our doors and we got to look at. Then we went all the way to the other spectrum and found a 2015 that never actually was even put in service. It was ordered by one chief, and then another chief took the new position, didn't like the truck for their size streets, and they traded it back in on a different style truck. We've even priced new demos that factories have, and honestly, that actually might be the best way to go whenever the city's ready to take on a debt such as that. I really did. When we first started talking, that O2 seemed something that would really fit our needs, and that truck would probably last us 15 years anyway. We could get 15 more years of life out of it compared to a new one lasting 30 plus. But then the more you think about it, the more you think the hydraulic lines, the electrical components, you just don't know. The trucks we have now have some age, and we run into, a lot of times this light isn't working or this light isn't working, having to track down where there's a crack in the wire or break in the wire. So the more Earl and I talked, it seemed like we both got to leaning towards a newer vehicle, and if it's not at this time, I've always said I can't get up in here and tell you all that we have to have this truck, because we really don't need it until we're going to need it, and I can't tell you when that is, and the sooner the better. But I really feel we're better off not settling for something older and then have to turn right around in 10 to 15 years and be back at the saying, hey, we're going to need to replace this truck. Because, like Earl has talked about, a couple of our pumpers both our frontline pumpers are getting a little age. One's a 93 and one's a 97, which if we went with a newer aerial, it would kind of subsidize some of the pumper capability. Well, really all of them, because it'll have a 2,000 gallon per minute pump on it, and it can be used just like a pumper. It doesn't have to have the ladder in the air to use it. So that was kind of going to help us on that end too. So
So you're saying if you buy a newer truck, later on you won't have to buy another pumper, maybe?
No, that's not the case either, but it kind of wouldn't have to. I mean, nothing says we have to, but you don't want to let them just get down to where your fleet's in bad shape, you know. There's, for some reason, there's been some really rapid buying of trucks lately, and some, like, I know a department just has 7 trucks on order now, and you know, we do have the new rescue truck coming. That's going to take care of us on that end for several years. The ladder has always been something that's been separate than the engines. But if we do this ladder, we have decided that we're gonna do away with the current ladder that we have and the old green truck that we keep down here by the post office, and that's gonna help us on our maintenance end of the expenses. You know, we won't be trying to take care of a couple more older trucks. And
so if you got the older vehicle of 2002 and you had problems with the hydraulics, what kind of money are we looking at there?
I really couldn't tell you. I could go back and see what they cost on the 85 that we have now. We had to have the main hydraulic boom rebuilt on it a few years back, but I don't recall what that cost. And actually, when they got this truck in, they had some hydraulic cylinders rebuilt on it, so I don't know what they spent on that. But
on the 2002.
Mm-hmm. And they've had the aerial certified on it, so it's all good. And
Tim, what's the difference in the price? Or does it say that?
Okay. As of right now, the way it stands, $390,000 is for the 02, and that truck has 13,000 miles, and I think it was about 1,700 engine hours. That 2015 has 10,000 miles and I believe 1,000 hours on it, and it is at this point in time $779,000. And a brand new one, just like this 15, that's a demo, would run $882,413. And a brand new demo like the 02 would run $970,000 and some change.
On the demo, what kind of warranty would be on it?
Full factory warranty. That's just like it never had any miles on it. It'd be.
I mean, is that for 1 year, 3 years?
Actually, this one, I think it came off the line in March of 17. The one that, but it's just they've driven it all over the country and to all the trade shows and everywhere. It's been their show truck, you know, for. New ones, brand new. I've had 2 different quotes of $1 million and $20 million and $25,000, somewhere right in there. So you're getting you know, close to a couple hundred taken off by going the way of a demo anyway. It's just so much to think about, you know.
So me looking at it, I kind of break it down by years, you know. So a 400K truck, 15 years, is going to cost you about 26 grand a year. We do $1 million over 30 years, that's $33,000 a year. I mean, I can fix a lot of hydraulics for $6,000 a year, or whatever needs to be done, and it's minimal. This is probably going to be used. I mean, they're always inside.
Yeah. It just depends on what what we'd ever decide to go with. If we went with a pretty new truck that was a substantial amount of money, we would probably be running it a lot more than it would. Well, either one we'd get, it's going to run all commercial institutions. The only thing it probably won't run right out the door is residential, just not knowing. Sometimes it can get a little tight in residential, but.
So like a pumper truck alone, what's like a new pumper truck run? We're talking about that this would kind of replace
Probably
as well.
400,000 to 500,000.
Okay.
So essentially, we've had two needs in the last 10 years, right? For this truck. Yeah. For the long ladder, the tire UI and Steinhouse. Right?
UI and where else?
Wasn't it the Steinhouse? Because
Steinhouse.
we couldn't get on top of it to direct our water.
Palace. Trying to think when else we've had.
Palace was more than 10 years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, Palace was probably back in
30 years. 30 years.
mid to latter 80s, probably.
Yeah. But when you need it, you need it. So one of the things we discussed that strengthens the case for either the 2002 or the 2015, we hadn't talked about the new ones by then, was the pumping capability. Because what we're doing is we're enhancing what we've got, and also backing up what we've got because it's older. So we'd have this added pumping power. 2002 and the 2015, both fairly well certified. And as we all know, even though we do have a new car dealer, sitting here present, when you buy a new vehicle, crap happens. And with all of the systems you've got on these, when you buy new, you're going to have crap to take care of. So sometimes, having a truck that's already in service is an advantage there. Now, we also talked about what we would have to buy separate in the way of equipment. Was there as much of that we would have to buy on these two, the 02 and the 15, as there was on the new?
Since our initial conversation, we, came to the point, well, we're not going to be keeping all these trucks. We just don't have room to keep them all, so we'll get rid of the 85 and the 75, which there'll be a lot of equipment I can take off those two trucks and put on this truck. So it negates that 20-some thousand that I originally talked about, because I was going to have to do something about air packs. Well, right now I've got 7 on that 85 that could come right off there and go on this, so that takes care of that. There's only a couple upgrades on the 02 that we definitely want, and one is an LED light upgrade to at least get the emergency lighting on the cab and the rear corners and several places into the new LED lights instead of the old rotators, which antiquates the truck a little bit, even. And that's about a $4,200 upgrade, and maybe another, I'd say another $800 maybe for 4 hand lights to be mounted in the cab. I'm not sure. I haven't negotiated it. I didn't really get into any. We were just asking for people's best prices without getting down to negotiating real hard, because I couldn't commit to anything on anything anyway. So, but I believe that's about his best price on that anyway. So, and he will, on the 02, he will take the 85 and the 75 in on trade. That was one thing that. So that moves those vehicles without us trying to market them on our own. And what he offered was pretty well what I'd said they were, the most they would hope to get out of them anyway, so.
10,000?
So would this delay purchase of a pumper truck or kind of extend the longevity? You know, if we were to do this, would it move that rotation down a few years, or?
That's probably fair.
Probably,
You know, I'm
this
trying to
would,
see how it fits in
I
that.
think it probably.
this would be a
moving
5-year
part.
newer vehicle than what we have now, so.
And we keep the 97.
And we keep the 97 and the 93.
Right.
Because I'm saying, if we don't do something with the ladder truck, we're probably going to need to look at a pumper truck anyway. Within what time frame?
I'd say, well, that truck, that 90, the newest one, 97, is
20 years.
soon to be 25 years old here in another 4 years or so, or whatever. So it probably would push us out, you know, could easily.
I'm just kind of seeing how it all fits in the replacement structure here, and if we can maybe bridge some gaps.
You almost need a 10-year plan for all your, look at all your equipment at one time, 10 years out.
We're in great shape on the rescue truck, though. And it should be here, they tell me, in February sometime, so.
Good.
I'm not real anxious for it in this cold weather anyway, because I'll have to stand outside and watch them pump test it and everything. And I just soon, if it stretched into March, it might be okay.
Well,
So, anyway, that's
we
kind
end
of
up
about
with
all.
We end up with two decisions. First is, you know, do we want to do this? Does it make sense to do that? And then the second decision is how do we pay for it? And that's where our Miracle Man comes
Yeah,
in.
well, obviously, I think I noted in there, neither one of these are in our current financial plan.
Right.
And they probably could have been, but then we got off on our soccer venture, and I think everybody's fine with that, but it did gobble up a lot of resources for hopefully a relatively short period. That's the way we set it up, but we still got a couple, 3 years before we get over the peak of that. So, and I also alluded in there to a refinancing opportunity on the bonds that were initially issued for the swimming pool. They're going to be eligible for that in a couple of years, and those were Build America bonds, which are not your typical municipal bond. They were issued at taxable rates, but with a subsidy from the federal government. And since those were issued, the federal government has reneged on their subsidy a little bit through the sequestration word you hear. So we're not getting quite as good a deal. And I'm hopeful, unless interest rates go over a lot in the next 2 years, that's probably refinanceable at a savings. I don't know if it's enough savings to pick up debt service on one of these completely, but you could also, at that point, there would be about 8 years left on the term. If you just refinanced them straight and stayed with the same term, you could probably piggyback maybe 2 more years onto the length of the maturity and add a little principal to it at that time. Yeah. So that's probably and that's probably always been there, but it's always been so far in the future it's not worth talking about, but it is getting a little closer now. So it's unfortunate though they weren't refundable at 5 years, but that wasn't possible at that time. So I did ask First State if they'd be interested in doing some kind of lease on it, and they said they'd be willing to engage on it. And they've been good partners for us recently, and I think actually this kind of stuff is more in their wheelhouse anywhere, where they've got some tangible security that that they can deal with in terms of it. But and I don't know what the rate would be. Obviously, the word is that the rate on municipal stuff probably isn't quite as good as it was since the Tax Act has passed, because the corporate rate has went down. So when they issue when they get tax-free income, it doesn't save us as much back when their rate was 35% instead of 21%. So I don't know how that factors into each particular bank, I suppose, but theoretically that reduces their incentive to find tax-free income. So.
Has anybody else got any questions or comments?
Just an observation, I think since you guys have looked more and more since then, I think probably need to focus just on a better consensus on what we really need or want, you know, because I wasn't getting sold to on how we needed this truck or how this fit this specific need, and I think we probably ought to address that and then get what we really need with, you know, when the timing's right. Just my opinion.
Yeah, procurement for a used vehicle is always difficult because you got, you know, how do you do it? Because it changes every day, or you know, 2 months from now it might have something better than you want. So,
but if we have some kind of dream specs, we can compare it, and this is where it meets and doesn't meet.
That's why I thought the discussion might be useful, because we've never fleshed out what we want at all. So,
well, and you make a good point, because if Whitney, if this is something like we want to do, and we're playing in the used market, we don't have to do it now, but we can get the rest of it set up, do the rest of the story, the financing, have the you know, how many years we want to do with it. We could get all of those decisions made and watch for the opportunity to present itself.
Really, about the only stipulations we've ever really kind of had was something in the 95 to 100 foot range. You know, some companies make 102, some make 94, and some make somewhere in that range, and wanted it to be a platform. We didn't really have any preference whether it was rear mount or mid mount. The 02 that there's pictures of, you can see that's a mid mount. The bucket is on the back of the truck instead of hanging out over the front. If everything was comparable on two vehicles and they were sitting side by side, we would choose the mid mount just for not having that bucket out over the front. Just, of course, everybody's going to be trained on driving it, but you know, there's still. And then we wanted somewhere in a 1,500, 2,000 gallon per minute pump. We wanted a water tank on it. Breathing air to the bucket, which pretty well, those things I've mentioned are on about every truck. So that's why it got so muddled up, is everything we looked at kind of suited, but like I said, with that short of flying all over the country, because they don't, you know, they don't really care about driving up here from Texas to show you a truck, you know, unless maybe some of the demos, but not the used trucks. You know, you get down there, they'll show them to you, and it's just hard to tell by pictures on a lot of it. That's why I think maybe this one piqued our interest so much when it actually come, and we got to pull it into station, took it down to Selwyn Place and put it over top of the building, and I know even some of my guys, when we discussed it before it was ever here, I think a couple of them were probably a little bit hesitant on when they heard it was an 02, and then when they pulled it in there and got a look at it, they're going, wow, this thing is really in good shape. You know, they're so that's really.
What are some of the bigger, say Columbia, Kansas City, when they trade, or how often they trade, and where do those go? You know what I mean? What do they do with their
Columbia has sold a couple outright. They've got a brand new one coming now that's supposed to be, I believe, around $1.3 million, and they'll be, I don't know if they'll be getting rid of one, but from what I was told, it's been pretty well worn out. That I had that told to me by a retiree from over there that said, you want to stay away from that truck. And so,
well, I was just curious at other type options, you know.
Most of them, most of them really are out here are brokers. They're like used car lots. A lot of them, you know, and you may see the same truck on 4 or 5 different guys' websites, you know, and they've all, you know, are able to sell this truck, and it may be sitting in Pensacola or somewhere, but they've all got it advertised. So it's a rough business.
I just couldn't imagine the demand being that big.
We've got some buildings now that we didn't have years ago. We got the Outlook 3, we got Swayland Place down here, and I think somebody's talking about the old Toastmaster. And, you know, I've been on this kick for years, and it's because I'd hate to have somebody stuck on the 4th, 5th floor of one of these buildings. And it could happen any day, you know. And we've just been biding our time, is what I say. I don't think we should spend $1 million on a truck, but I think this truck would be a good truck for us. And I would say it lasts more than 15, 20 years. Because we don't run them at Columbia. I wouldn't buy a truck from Columbia because they run them on every call they go to. And we're not going to be doing that. You know, some months we may not take it out of the garage. And that's what we built the fire station for, was a truck like this. And how old's the fire station now?
I believe it's 5 years old now. I think we moved in September of 12. I think.
I would say it's time to put something in there that we built the fire station for, and this price. You know, this truck has, this 2002 has what is it? 3,000 more miles on it than the 15, and 700 more hours on the engine, which probably isn't anything when you talk about diesel, and it is diesel, I'm sure. You know. So I would rather, and like Tim said, it was like brand new. I didn't see it, but I'm going on what he told me. The pictures were good. And the other thing is, Tim's put away $100,000 in the last few years on a vehicle like this. For those of you that don't know, he's got about $100,000 laid back for a truck. So.
Is the consensus of the council that we need to pursue this, not to make a hard decision on this until we get the financing and all the other pieces put together, or what are your thoughts?
I feel like we should move towards going ahead and purchasing one after the horrible fire in New York earlier this week. Terrible things happen, and like Henry said, we're basically biding our time. More importantly, I like the idea of the 2015 because it isn't as old as the 2002, but that's my personal opinion on it. But I do think we need to move towards serious discussion of purchase of something that, whether it's any of these or something else comes along in the near future.
Thank you, Mike.
I think so. I think we gotta look for a little newer one in 02 though, but I mean, I'm not the expert on trucks either. But car business, as per goes, things are used free.
You got to look at it. You're either buying 15 or you're buying 30 years.
Yeah.
You're buying time.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't know. You're the man.
But it's better to buy the 15 than not.
Not anything.
I think.
You're right.
We did have Daryl Hurt come down and looked over it the best he could, you know, of course, and he thought everything looked tight to him, you know, that sounded good, the frame looked good.
So your hydraulics, they're tested every year?
The ladder is inspected every year, and they check all the bolts and everything, make sure everything's tight, and they can't move. You know, it has to sit there so long without slipping it, without the hydraulic slipping any. And then every 5 years is a non-destructive test that has to be done on it, and they put weights out on it, and so it'll be certified with all that. It just did get certified. He told me, I think the week before Christmas.
Now, in your memo also, there's some issues as far as the men right now. The truck you have now, you have to walk, you have to climb the ladder. On one of these new ones, it's a lot safer because you can get in the bucket and they can
Right,
raise that bucket.
yeah.
So there's safety issues too.
Right.
For your firefighters.
Yeah, and when you saw it down there in the air, down there like a cell, when you wouldn't want to climb it anyway.
Yeah, you would.
It's a long way.
Earl, is the consensus, enough for you and Tim to put a plan together?
Yeah, we can take a shot at something, yeah. On the O2.
On the O2.
O2 or the 15. It wouldn't take that much to have the option inside the plan.
With financing and stuff,
Yeah, you got the financing, you got the
and I don't,
availabilities and all that kind of stuff.
yeah. They've all, as we've kind of fooled with the people, they've all sort of knocked the price down. I'm not sure it's beyond the pale to offer them, either one of them something a little less.
Should we also look at other machinery that's going to have to be replaced in 5 years and look at, some kind of 10-year plan?
Well, I guess in my mind that gets divided into what I call stuff we can sort of accommodate in the gaming budget and that kind of stuff, which might be, a dump truck might cost $60,000 or $80,000.
Right.
You can kind of pick up one of those every once in a while, pick up some air compressors like that. But there's some stuff like a Caterpillar or the bulldozer that we purchased last year, or a fire truck. You can't just roll in and out of an annual budget.
Right. But you could earmark so much per year.
You could try to start saving, but I'm not sure if that's feasible at the moment.
So is it senses that Earl just put some numbers together and get back with us?
I think so.
On both of the two.
On both of them.
We'll put together something. So.
Okay, thank you, Tim. We'll run reports from committee. Parks and Board, it was canceled. Housing Board, it was canceled. Street and Alley, canceled.
Yep.
Board of Public Works,
I think everything.
Yeah, it was canceled.
it was canceled.
Everything but
MFA, Steve?
I wasn't able to make those 2 meetings, but Kate's here, and I think Jim might give you a little spill here in a little bit.
Anything you want to bring up, Kate? Reports to Standing Commission, City Administrator.
We've talked about having an update on the animal shelter, and so we're going to try to do that tonight. I think there's a couple little diagrams in your packet, and Steve and ML are going to kind of tag team our thoughts on that.
To kind of run down the history on how we got to where we are today, Steve had done several preliminary floor plans based on his experience with his own or his wife's business. We then sat down and massaged those preliminary floor plans with the ad hoc animal shelter committee and the animal control officers. Did that in a couple different sessions. We had looked at some animal shelters, Fulton specifically, which is a fairly new animal shelter, and refined some of Steve's initial floor plan drawings. Once we had reached a consensus on the floor plan and the building, we then went to Septagon for them to formalize Steve's drawings by an architect. And we're going to need those formalized drawings for a couple reasons. We're going to need them so that we can have bid documents for those parts of the project that we're not going to build ourselves, and we're going to need it for some certification with the Missouri Department of Agriculture. And that's the drawings you have in your packet. You can see the building elevations, and you can see the floor plan, and those are back from Septagon's architect. So these are as final as we have. What we were able to do is, once we formalized the building floor plan and the building elevation, that basically formalized the building footprint. Steve is going to be the principal constructor of this building, most certainly for that parts of it that we're going to do with city crews. So now that he had his footprint, we were able to go to the site that we had intended to build the animal shelter on, which is right immediately next to the existing animal shelter. The plan is leave the existing animal shelter in place while we construct the new one.
You're going east, west, north, south of the existing
to the east
building.
of it.
East. Okay.
But what happened is, when we had our floor plan and our footprint, we were now able to better define the area that we were going to construct the building in. Steve was able to do some test boring, test digging. We dug several test holes out there. We knew from experience and then from, I guess, history, that there was a good bit of cinders near that animal shelter site. We just didn't know how much and where it went. Once we had the floor plan to set it down, we then were able to dig where we were going to put the building. And in doing that, we discovered the cinders were wider spread than we had anticipated, and that there was municipal garbage mixed in with the cinders in some of our test holes. So we then had to drop back a little bit. Our site right immediately next to the old animal shelter had a few other minor problems. It was going to be a little bit of a challenge to get sanitary sewer from it. We would have to do a grinder pump and some things like that. That was a little more difficult. So given the new information we came up with when we dug the test holes, we started looking at a lot down Morgan Street, very near, directly across from the old wastewater treatment plant, or actually more directly across from the Ameren, Missouri pole yard. This new lot, new site, gives us a couple advantages. We have always had a contingency plan from the floods of 93, 95, and 05. When the Lily Branch flooded, we had contingency plans to evacuate the animal shelter because they were on the other side of the flooded Lily Branch. If we come down to the new lot, we are above the floodplain, and we no longer have that, or will no longer have that concern based on the historical flood levels. We eliminated the problem with sanitary sewer. It's closer to the gravity sewer line, so we will more than likely not have to do a grinder pump and pump the sewer. And then we are well away from any of the cinders or the trash area out at the other site. We can build. Septagon had approached
different?
us, huh?
Emily, you got me totally confused. I'm sorry. A minute ago you said the new building was going to be east of the existing building, and now you're talking about going down.
That's right.
Down the hill to.
And going down the hill has a couple advantages over the original lot.
Is that where we're going, or are we staying up on top?
That's where we're going, but if that falls through, we have looked at some options at building on the cinders. It's much, much more expensive and much difficult, but it's an option that we're going to have if we have another problem.
Okay, so what you told me is not where we're going in the first place. The first place is down the hill.
Right. Mm-hmm.
This would be an alternative site to the first choice.
I'm good now that I understand that. You have me totally confused.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So which is first choice?
First choice is the one down by the sewer plant.
The building's gonna be the same, floor plan's gonna be the same, footprint's gonna be the same, elevation's gonna be the same. It'll be on a lot that's has a couple more advantages. We will have to do a little, some additional surveying to kind of make sure it fits down there. We may, depends on how it fits on the existing lot, either purchase or trade a little bit of property from the Hubert Fiberboard right immediately adjacent to the lot. We've approached Hubert Fiberboard, and the local management's receptive, but their corporate folks, well, they were out until today, so we haven't heard back from corporate on that.
One other advantage too, firing range is always
Discussion.
discussion for, that location up there, because as you know, that firing range is directly below. Now, this gets us farther away from the firing range, so it's going in opposite direction of everything. So that's kind of another, a really good third advantage of this other possible site. So.
We had done a little work on the firing range. We had taken the line of fire and we had probably turned it to the northwest 45 or so degrees to turn it a little away from the animal shelter. But there was only so much we can do given the firing range. Like Steve said, we are completely behind the firing range now and down the street, not adjacent to it.
Ned, the land that they're talking about, some of you probably remember, I don't know, it's been maybe 5 years ago, ML.
Yeah.
When the state was trying to sell their surplus property, it was kind of a parallel to Morgan Street. In fact, in their eyes, they thought they owned some of Morgan Street. So we, the council, made us buy a piece of that land that's parallel. It starts clear up there, almost where Hubert's pile of chips are, goes all the way down to the ditch, parallel to Morgan Street. And it goes down and kind of bottoms out there before it gets the ditch.
And that was north of Morgan. No, or was it south of Morgan?
South.
That's what I thought.
South.
Yeah, it was south of Morgan.
Right.
So this will be north of Morgan?
No, it'll be south.
The
It's
south.
on that piece, and what
Okay.
they're saying, when you get down there, they'd like to have just a little more depth. And
Yeah,
so
there
we
was a
were gonna
little
trade it.
sliver out of Persinger, wasn't it?
Well, I don't know if it was ever really part of Persinger, because it's
Or next to it.
next
yeah.
to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was where, remember when Sarah was gonna put a jewelry thing down? It's right in there.
Okay.
Okay.
So the option that we're looking at, this is the sliver right here that we purchased a couple of years ago, and that
Right.
actually runs all the way up almost to where you go into the gate up here on top of the hill. So the thought was this area right here, a really very accessible, good level site. The gravity flow sewer that ML was talking about, it sits right there, that light spot that you see, that's the manhole.
And this is the Lily Branch?
This is Lily Branch right here, but this elevation sits several foot above that, so it's out of the floodplain. So the thought was, if the management that is not in state here, the thought was to maybe trade them like a half an acre for a half an acre. And it does a couple of things for them, because there's actually quite a little bit of them.
Storage area.
Yeah, the storage area that kind of sits on us now that we've acquired that piece of property. So now, like Mel said, we're just kind of waiting to hear from the
I
other
was gonna say,
management.
it's right out there past.
Well, yeah, I was just trying to figure
Steve, you have any idea what the cost is gonna be,
As far as the
complete job?
until we get some numbers back from Septagon, because we're gonna bid out the block work and we're gonna bid out the HVAC. Everything else, we're planning on.
That
you, gentlemen.
Nice work. It's gonna be nice for the ride too. It'll be nice for the dog ride.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
City Councilor. You have anything?
Oh, just to, want to draw everyone's attention to the very back of your packet that Boonville is hosting the Central Regional meeting of the Missouri Municipal League on the 17th of January. You're all invited, and you can sign up on the MML website. And we hope to have
time?
I think it starts around 6 p.m. and will include dinner. And the details and RSVP are there on the site. And it's always fun. They take roll, and so it's fun to see how many people from different cities are there. So it'd be nice to have a really good group from Boonville, obviously, for that. And it's at our very own Rails and Trails Museum. Wednesday, the 17th.
17th,
Morris, I have one thing.
Oh, absolutely.
On our next meeting is the 16th. It's the day after Martin Luther King, so it's 2 weeks from tonight, Tuesday. I'd like to have our first budget work session that night. It'd be just on some of the easier funds, if you will. So I'd like for us maybe to start at 6 o'clock on that night. Everybody all right with that?
I'm out of town that night.
Well, we'll probably do sanitation and tourism that night. And then we'll probably have another meeting, maybe the last Monday of the month, moving on to water and sewer. But that won't be ahead of a council meeting, so we can kind of do it whenever we want.
That's the 29th.
Pardon?
29th?
Yeah, is that the last Monday? The fifth Monday?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's tentative, but yes.
Sewer.
6 o'clock.
It's okay with me. Yeah.
We can have pizza.
Anything else, sir?
No.
Jim.
Mayor Pro Tem, Council, my report is on pages 30 and 31 of your packet. Actually, a fairly busy month. We have some new projects, as you can see there, from the Missouri Partnership in Section 2, as well as some local activity that's been generated around some of our sites. Just to jump back to 2F there to give you an idea, everything that's on my report every month is something that I consider to still be active. So Project Tito has now been running, we have to be close to 2 years now. And as you can see through 12-8 communication, we're still in the mix. So some of these take a while to develop. But anyway, everything that you see every month are things that I consider to be active. So just to give you an idea of the time scale. Anyway, the last 2 weeks have been fairly slow for the holidays, but I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
So 2A is, I'm assuming since you said it's active, it's not Nucor and Sedalia?
It is not. That is
Okay.
That's separate.
Okay.
Yeah. So we did not. So Nucor and Sedalia was that was Project Rotag, which we had the opportunity to look at. That was a site that required, my recollection is, in excess of 200 acres along a rail line, which we did not have a site for. So Nucor is going to be making steel reinforcement bar in Sedalia, and that's along that part of their industrial park. Some land got acquired to be along the rail line there. Okay.
Anybody got any questions for Jim?
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Jim.
City Clerk.
Just a couple updates. So, filing update. As of today's date, there have been 3 filings for the April 3rd, 2018 election. They are Edward Ned Beach for mayor, Susan Meadows for Ward 2, and Steve Young for Ward 1. The upcoming election is for the 4 council seats located on the south side of the chambers, or the left side, and also for the office of mayor. The filing period for the election will close on January 16th, 2018. And then Earl also already alluded to the fact, but the next city council meeting will be held on Tuesday, January 16th, due to the Martin Luther King holiday.
miscellaneous.
I have a pet peeve.
What's new? I mean, go ahead.
These are the last two Boonville Daily News, Liz, and I know you already knew I was going to whine about this, and that's my pet peeve. Neither one of these papers has anything about Boonville or Cooper County on the front page. We only have one person who represents any kind of similarity to Boonville's views on the editorial pages. Thank God for Judy Stock. Thank God for Liz Davis. And sweet Jesus, what would we do without Chris? They're the only folks that are taking care of Boonville. The people that are running this paper need to wake up. Now ask me what I really think.
Anybody else got anything? Yeah, well.
I have a couple updates. I've received some inquiries about some work that we had done on the pillars off of Water Street for the Missouri River Bridge, MoDOT's bridge. Let's see, Friday the 22nd, so the evening of the 20th and 21st of December, the pillars down there just right at Water Street were tagged with some very explicit graphic graffiti. That's been a target for graffiti pretty regularly, but it's been a very long time since the tags have been as graphic or as explicit as what we saw the week before Christmas. MoDOT handles that stuff. They can handle that stuff. The MoDOT guys were off somewhere else, so we went down with the sewer jet truck and jetted off the most graphic of the graffiti. And some of the concerns I have is that we're doing stuff on MoDOT's. Well, we are, but we live here in Boonville, and it was offensive to us, so we made it go away. MoDOT will eventually come back and work on some more of that graffiti. They paint. They have a gray paint. They paint over it. Well, this is not the time of year that we do that. So we did that. We did it on MoDOT's bridge, but we'd do it again if necessary. Trash routes. The garbage trucks are taking a real beating when it gets cold like this. A couple things happen. The trucks are parked outside. They have fuel and oil heaters so they can start them, but the hydraulics and the interior of the trucks take a beating with frozen water. The routes Friday were late, and then this morning by 9 o'clock, the Boonville routes were behind, and they didn't get a chance to finish the Boonville routes. They have been very successful at when they get behind like this, as the rural routes come back in, they will send a truck to pick up pieces of the Boonville route that hasn't been hit or missed. Well, it's a domino effect. If a guy's out on a rural route and his truck breaks down, then the truck they plan to make up the difference for the truck that goes down, and that's where they are. This is not unusual. This happens every time it gets a long cold snap like this, and basically the hydraulics freeze up. Truck driver leaves town. He empties a couple dumpsters that may be a little more liquid than not, and they freeze up before he gets back to the transfer station. His spade doesn't work. He can't take on any more trash. They weather through this, but that's kind of where we are on trash routes.
Anybody got any questions for Emil? Thank you, Emil. Hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Go, Mike.
Everybody in favor, say aye.
Aye.